Welcome to the Getting Started section for CORIOgrapher for CORIOmaster 2 and CORIOmaster. In this section, I'm going to show you how we connect to a CORIOmaster. I'm going to show you how we upgrade firmware, and then I'm going to create an offline configuration, show you how we'd upload that to a unit, and then I'm going to connect to a live unit. You can see I've already downloaded CORIOdiscover from the tvONE support website, and double clicking on it, the first thing it'll do, it'll highlight all of the units that are on my network. So you can see here I've got quite a few, and I could log on to any of these from this single PC. I've already named my CORIOmaster 2, which is just sat in the rack there behind me, training room, so we know which one it is we're working with. If I double click on it, it comes up with three options. So the first is configure. So this is where I set up my networking. So I can either set up DHCP, which is how I'm set up at the moment, or I can set a static address. And I'm going to stick with that. Later in this series, I'll be showing you how to log on in other ways using HTTPS and maybe even using our RESTful API. So that'll be later in the series, but for now I'm happy. So that's all set up. And next to it, you can see there's an indicator. At the moment, that's green, which means I've got no problems logging on to this CORIOmaster 2 whatsoever. If it was amber, it would normally mean there's some sort of IP conflict. So perhaps I'm on a static address on a different series, or there's a conflict. It could also be red. You wouldn't normally see that in the field unless your firmware and your software were way out of kilter of each other. Now, I'm happy I can connect. Next thing I want to do is show you how we update firmware. Dead simple. So we click in update. Before I do this, I go to the customer support website again, which is tvone.com, and just follow it for the links to firmware. I have to log in for this, so that the default login is admin, and then the password is admin pw. So admin pw. And then all I do is I browse to the file, and it's on my desktop here, and you see it shows up as a DAT file. So I don't need to upgrade because I'm on the latest firmware, but I'll show you what would happen. So if I click on it and then say open, what it'll do is unzip it, and first thing it'll do is it will check whether I need the update. So it should say I don't. So if I go start update, the first thing it does is it checks what firmware version I'm running, and it tells me here that I'm about to install the same as I have already, and obviously I don't want to do that. Now, if I was going to upgrade, it goes through 9 stages. Obviously, so the first check is to see what version of firmware I have running on the unit. The next thing it will do is make a copy of all of my settings onto an SD card that's on the control module in the chassis. After that, it will go through all 9 stages, and towards the end, the unit will restart, and that is your cue that you're about ready to go. Really simple process then. Let's cancel this. And I'll say no here, and I'm going to close. So they're the two main things I do here. The other thing I have in here is a resolution editor. Wouldn't normally use it in CORIOdiscover. I only use it really to set my networking up and make sure my firmware is up to date, because it's also in the CORIOgrapher software. I would much prefer to set up my custom resolutions there, but it's here if you did want to use it in here. Once again, log in, admin pw, and that will take you in here. And you can see all the resolutions we support. So on this CORIOmaster 2 unit, I'm supporting everything from 640, 480 up to 4K. And I've also got 20 slots for custom resolutions, which are down the bottom. Like I said, I'm going to cover this when I get to the CORIOgrapher video, and we'll be looking at setting custom resolutions for LED. CORIOgrapher is the software that I use to set up and control my CORIOmaster or my CORIOmaster 2. So here it is on the desktop. Once again, you download this from the customer support website, and just look in software. You have several options here. You can create an offline configuration, is what we're going to do in a second, but you also can load a configuration from a file. So you can see I've got some here I've created already, or you can connect to the device, and I'll be showing that in the next module. So first thing I'm going to do is create an offline configuration. And this is really useful if you're designing a system and you don't have the hardware yet, or you want to check out whether CORIOmaster or CORIOmaster 2 will fulfill your job. So on the top level, we can pull a drop-down box down, and you can see here, this is the CORIOmaster 2, the CORIOmaster Mini, and the CORIOmaster Micro, and below we have the CorioView products. Now, in this series, I'm not going to show you CORIOgrapher working for CorioView. There are some other videos on the YouTube site already. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a Coriomaster 2. So the first thing I can do is I can give it a name, so I can call it the name of the project, and that helps later. And essentially all I do is I go through and add modules. Now the two columns in a Coriomaster 2 are slightly different. The right hand column will take the high bandwidth modules, and the left hand column will take the standard modules. Of course, the right hand column will take standard modules as well. So all I do the drop down menu and start adding modules. It's going to be the media and streaming module, and I just carry on adding modules. So maybe a broadcast module, maybe I want to have some legacy formats like DVI or VGA or composite video or S-video, so that module will do that for me. And I can add up to 8 modules in here. Below I can add an audio module, and I can add different power supplies in the bottom. And all the time this is building up on the top right a product code for me, and this is what if you're ordering a system we would quote against, because there's so many variations. It's a much easier way to list the product. And on the right hand side I have my output, so I'm going to put 2 are going to be quad outs, and the last is going to be 2K8 out card. And you'll see it already says here I can use 3 canvases. Now there's a difference here between Coriomaster 2 and Coriomaster. In Coriomaster 2 I can have up to 3 canvases. So if you think of this wall as one canvas, I could have 3 walls and populate them. In Coriomaster, in the 4RU version, I can have 4 canvases. In the 1RU version, which we call Coriomaster Mini, 4 canvases, and in the Coriomaster Micro, which is half width 1RU, I can have 2 canvases. There is a slight difference here, and the configuration table looks slightly different as well. So if I create this, I have to do a little bit of work here, and I'll explain this in more depth when I get to showing you on a live system. There's going to be lots of videos coming up where I'm going to add displays and windows for real behind me. So I'm just going to apply that. All I've done there is set a uniform refresh rate right across all 3 canvases, if I had 3. In a moment we'll see how big Coriomaster 2 canvases are. They're huge. They're 64,000 pixels by 64,000 pixels, which means actually I can put multiple walls on a single canvas if I want to, which gives me even more flexibility. Now what I do, I'm just going to zoom back in again because this is so big. I'm going to show my assets and start adding displays. I'm not going to set up a whole wall here, but yeah, I just want to show you how easy it is to set up a wall. Now you can see this has come up red, and I've done this on purpose because if you remember I set my unified frame rate to 60 frames a second. Now these, if I double click on one of these, it's showing up as 30. So I'm just going to come down, put it to 60, and we're all sorted. So I'm just going to add a couple here, but I could add as many displays as I want. If I want to rotate, let's just zoom in a little bit. If I want to rotate, it is simple. I've got a handle here to rotate, and I've got a handle to move. I can also do it on the bottom bar. I'm set by millimeters at the minute. But also just by clicking pixel mode I can set everything into pixel mode. If you want to work in inches we can do that also. So I'll turn off pixel mode, and then what I'll do is I'm just going to do this back to being square. So if I had a simple wall, and this is really truly a simple wall for CorioMaster, if I want to add sources now, I literally come in here and pull sources on top. So this one I want to be across both, and then I want to add a window on top. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail because in a later video I'm going to be making this wall behind me from scratch, and I'm going to be talking about display settings. I'm going to talk about window settings as well. Now, the last thing, if this was a real wall I was doing, I would save this as a preset as well. So I'll just give it a name. I'll just call it 1 for now, and I'd add a preset. We can have two types of presets. We can have the traditional preset, which contains both the window position and the source that's in that window, but we can also have layout only presets, which can prove to be really useful if you're programming your CORIOmaster or CORIOmaster 2 using a third-party automation system, as it cuts down on the number of presets you need to create in the first place. What you can also do is you can work with us, and if you come into module configuration, you can do this printout and we will build it to this exact spec. So if you're setting up an automation system around it, you're good to go. So that's how we create offline configurations using CORIOgrapher. What I want to do now is I want to connect CORIOgrapher in online mode to the CORIOmaster 2 behind me in the rack. So you can see all of my units. What I'm going to do is I'm going to log into it. So it's admin pw, and I'm going to log in. I'm going to read the settings. I've got the options of sending my previous configuration I made offline, reading, or connecting. Now, read is what I'm going to do now, so it's reading all the settings off the wall behind me. But if I do want to go through this process, if I just wanted to test commands out using the console, which is here down at the bottom right, I can just connect, so it just saves me a little bit of time if you're testing an automation system. Now, you can right away see that I've got a mirror of what's going on behind me on the software. Now, there's a few things I want to show you before we get to setting displays and windows in a future video. Some just good housekeeping practices that will save you a lot of time. Let's go down to settings. Now, there's some really useful things to show you. So the first one is on the top level here. This is where we name our unit. So I've called it training room, so anybody here in the R&D Centre of Excellence can see that it's the training room unit. Likewise, I can see all of theirs as well. So that's really useful if you're doing a cookie cutter installation. Maybe you have CORIOmaster installed in several rooms, then you can quickly see which one you're logging on. And in that situation, it's really cool because you can actually copy settings from room to room as well. The next thing is preset easing. This basically controls the dynamic of window movement when we're firing presets. So with it on, the window, if it's got a duration that it's going to move across, it will speed up from the original position to full speed, and then it will slow down into the final position. With this off, it just goes in a straight speed from one position to the next. There's a bunch of stuff down here that we're going to look at in a future video when we look at different control methods, including HTTPS. So I'll go past that. This is the configurator for the modules. So this will show you how my unit is set up behind. So I'm set up for 3 canvases, but actually this module and this module are set up on 1 canvas. So effectively this has made this into a 2 canvas system. The reason I designed this unit like this is it does give me flexibility later to be able to split this out into 3 canvases. Here are my inputs. I've got a mixture of media and streaming modules, dual 4K ins, and I've also got some SDI, and I've got a card that can handle legacy formats, including VGA, composite video, S-video, that sort of thing. There's an EDID Manager. We'll talk about EDID Manager in a future video. Essentially, I can read an EDID, I can convert it to an 8.3 file format, and then push it back in. I'll show you where we access that later. Resolution editor we're going to cover in a future video as well, but if you watch the first video in this little series, you'll notice I mentioned it was in CORIOdiscover as well. This is one of the places it exists directly in CORIOgrapher as well. This is CORIOgrapher, so the log, and what the log refers to is what I record in the console. So all of this information I can record from login right up to the current moment. I can make the log as long as I like, and that's really useful if you were to have an issue with your CORIOmaster and you wanted us to help provide you some customer support. then that's a really useful file to have, as is the config of the system. So send us those two things in a short video. It really, really helps us. This is the default unit. So I previously mentioned we have inches and millimeters. We also have pixels as well. I've got 4 users that I can have, and they can have separate logins. I'm logged on as the administrator at the moment. That was the admin pw password by default. The one thing I do when I'm setting up is I disable the timeout. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll partway through setting something up and you maybe have waited for the default of 5 minutes and the system will log out. So I normally leave that and I turn that off while I'm setting up. The other users you can have are users and power users. So a user can do everything I'm going to do in these videos apart from set passwords. Only an administrator can do that. And a user can only control the unit using the dashboard. So there you go. And that's really useful. Having 4 users is pretty handy. I can have one person using CORIOgrapher and maybe 3 separate control panels. Remember, I've got multiple canvases I can go to on CORIOmaster 2. So that's really handy. I can have controls in separate rooms, and an administrator can also connect. Backup and restore. When we did our update of our firmware through CORIOdiscover, it would automatically do it. If I want to back up during a project, this is where I do it. Now, system tells me about the system. System health is a window we only have in CORIOmaster 2, and it tells me the temperature of the system, how the fans are working, that sort of thing. Slot status is my go-to menu in settings. So it's got all my sources and all my displays. Now, you'll notice I've named everything in here. This is the easiest way to save yourself a lot of time when you're installing a unit, is to name everything. And that's the first thing I'll do. I'll come in here and I'll name all the sources and I'll check that they go on the wall. I also, if you come across like Blu-ray 1, you can see that it's found the HDMI and it's found the resolution as well. And if I come down here, some of these are invalid because they've not been found because there's nothing plugged in there. So what we do is we tell you whether it's okay or invalid, and we measure the resolution as well. We can also see about HDCP values as well, so I can turn that on and off, and I can also set different versions. So if I've got a module that's capable of working in 1.4 and 2.2, I can select that. Sometimes you'll get an invalid setting here, but you'll have an odd resolution over here. That is because that resolution table I showed you in the CORIOdiscover video, it's referring to that on the input and the output. So if it's a slightly different frame rate from something in our table, it will show up as invalid, although we'll try and show it on the wall. So you can see I've labeled everything here. I've also labeled everything on the walls. I've got wall top left, top center, top right down here, and I've got some side screens that I'm working on for a future video as well. So this is my go-to menu when I'm setting up a system. If I'm struggling to get all my sources on the wall, this is the first place I go to check. There's a constraint, so this is showing me I've got 64 windows I can put on this canvas, and that varies between CORIOmaster 2, CORIOmaster, CORIOmaster Micro and CORIOmaster Mini. This will change. They all have 50 presets. And the last menu here is for the front panel. Now I can affect a few things here on my CORIOmaster 2 that's behind me in the rack. First thing I can do is change the brightness of the backlit chevrons. Now what I'll do is I'll turn these right down and refresh it. But of course, normally I'm at a trade show or a partner location. I want the CORIOmaster 2 to be seen in the rack, so I'll leave that up. The other thing, there's a display on the front of the unit, and I can change what it says there and also the brightness of that as well. Okay, let's go back to the editor. Now, in a future video, I'm going to show you how to set this up from scratch. The last thing I want to show you for now is this really handy tool, the test pattern generator. And this is really useful if you haven't got sources hooked up yet. And I'll fire this over to test pattern, and I'll push take. And the wall behind me has now gone to test patterns. And you can fire up different test patterns if you want to. If you're looking at API document, and I'll talk about this in a future video, but you can find it at api.tvone.com. In the console, you can come in here and you can type in a command and change the color bar pattern. that's all I'm going to do for now. Come back in a future video and I will show you how to add the displays, add the windows, set the presets. So they will come in future videos, but for now, thanks for watching this getting started section. See you in a future video. Bye now.